This is Global Tennessee, news, analysis, and commentary from the Tennessee World Affairs Council in Nashville. Global Tennessee is produced in association with the Center for International Business at Belmont University and the International Business Council of the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce. The World Affairs Council is a nonpartisan, nonprofit educational association, and the views expressed on Global Tennessee are those of the participants.
Welcome to the September 2nd edition of the Tennessee World Affairs Council's Global News Review. I'm Patrick Ryan, President of the Tennessee World Affairs Council. Today, Ambassador Dick Bowers and I will present the top items in global current events and give you analysis and commentary. Dr. Breck Walker is off this week. He'll be back next week to fill in our trio here. Dick, good to see you as we open another month in 2020, another month pregnant with possibilities.
There you go. Good to see you. Good to be back.
Well, let's jump right in here, and we're going to talk first before we get too far into our program. Remind people about some upcoming programs we have. We are proud to be participating in a terrific project with a number of other World Affairs Councils. COVID Complexities, a global town hall. This is a collaboration between World Affairs Councils and journalists from around the world, including Russia, China, Iran, Latin America, who will be talking with us this evening at 6 Central Time, 7 Eastern Time, in a webinar, and the link is on our website, about how the developing world is coping. Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel, he's a physician of some renown, worked in the Obama administration on the Affordable Care Act. He'll be the keynote speaker. And tomorrow night, we'll be talking about COVID-19 returning to normal, vaccines, therapeutics, what the other side of COVID looks like, a collection of public health officials and others from across the country to talk about the COVID situation.
That's the September 3rd, right? Pat, I've got a typo in there, I think.
That's correct. Thank you for that correction. So tomorrow, Thursday, September 3rd, and tonight's program is Wednesday, September 2nd, 7 p.m. Eastern Time and 6 p.m. Central Time. So please take a look at that. It's going to be a terrific program. We also have coming up, we're very proud to present the Election 2020 project, a series of panels, and we've got really an all-star cast of panelists, distinguished speakers, ambassadors, plenipotentiary, is that the term, Mr. Ambassador?
Normally they link it with extraordinary and plenipotentiary.
Extraordinary and plenipotentiary. No potentates, but
and you always knew the guy wanted something from you when he shake your hand and say, "Oh, Excellency, Excellency, how are you?"
Well, we have a few of those and some other distinguished speakers from think tanks and elsewhere, thought leaders. And the idea is to present the critical topics that people should understand a little bit more about as we look forward to the election on November 3rd. We're doing this project in connection with Belmont University's hosting of the third presidential debate on October 22nd. And we will also have watch parties on the evening of the debate, as well as election eve. So look for that on our calendar as well. And when you're working through the calendar there, you can see what we've done in terms of updating our website. So Dick, I think, well, let me also add one more note while we're at it, to talk about membership in the World Affairs Council. As people who participate in this program know, we do quite a lot of programming via webinar, but we also are active in educational outreach programs like the Academic World Quest program. So between our community outreach via webinars and other programs and our education outreach, we're a busy little World Affairs Council here. And we ask that you support our work through a membership or a gift to the council. You can visit tnwac.org to find out more about how you can support this World Affairs Council. It's a unique organization in Tennessee, a nonpartisan, nonprofit educational group. Okay, Dick, I think we're pretty close to kicking it off here. So if you want to jump into our topics du jour.
Well, we're going to have three kind of very different but very interesting topics. First, we're going to talk a little bit about Japan, and Prime Minister Abe has submitted his resignation, so he's standing down. What does that mean for Japan and the region and for the U.S.? And then we're going to pivot to Russian election interference. Here we go again. And that's what are they doing? How are they doing it? Why aren't we better prepared than we were last time? And all that good stuff. And finally, we're going to go on a med cruise and talk about the Turkish-Greek face-off in the Eastern Mediterranean, which is spicing up the politics in the area and making a lot of people nervous that this could lead to actual shooting warfare. So those are our three topics. Pat?
Dick, I've made a couple of med cruises, but they weren't the kind of cruises that you might have gone on.
Well, what's going on out there right now are not the kind that we would like to take, but
yeah,
sides are pushing their own naval fleets into the region, so
we'll get into that. That's
including the United States has got a vessel out there, I understand. So.
Yep, for sure. Okay, well let's get into our topics, but before one last thing before we do, the question of the week, and Dr. Breck Walker, who's usually our quiz reader here, he typically gets foreign languages involved here, and I've gotten some pushback on that, and he'll probably, if he's watching, will take issue with me that there are no foreign names to pronounce here. It's pretty straightforward. So the question is, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence will no longer brief key congressional committees on this issue. Is it A, Chinese espionage, B, election security, C, Russian oligarchs' investments, D, cooperation between domestic and foreign nationalist groups? And we'll have the answer at the end. And just a reminder, if you subscribe to the Tennessee World Affairs Council newsletter, and you can do that on our website, you'll get a 10-question quiz in the email every Monday morning, the What in the World Weekly Quiz. And you can, if you're a member of the World Affairs Council, actually, when your scores are answered at the end of the week, be eligible for a nice prize. This month it was the just released book by Dr. Thomas Schwartz, friend of the World Affairs Council, on Henry Kissinger and American politics. And Dick, you're a regular quiz guy. Unfortunately, members of the board of the World Affairs Council and owners of Pizza Huts and McDonald's are not eligible to win our prize. So you typically do very well. I do notice.
I enjoy it. I would urge people to take it. I mean, the one thing is no Googling. You gotta go with what you got, right? So you can't just say, "Oh, I can find this out." It is
the honor system,
yeah.
And I think
and I think it's growing, right, Pat? I mean, you are now syndicating this to other World Affairs Councils, are you not?
We are, and if there's any other World Affairs Councils out there listening, and we'd be happy to have a conversation about subscription to the quiz. But I was going to say that I noticed, Dick, that sometimes you take issue with with some of the questions, but we won't
I do take issue sometimes. But that's all right.
We won't get too far into that. Well, Dick, in the news this week, a significant development in leadership in Japan. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who I believe is the longest serving.
He is indeed the longest serving prime minister in Japanese history, and he stepped down basically there's a downturn in his health situation, which has had for quite some time, but it was basically under control, sort of a chronic inflammatory bowel disease, which I guess can be quite painful and difficult to deal with. Yeah. And so he basically said in a press conference that he would be stepping down. He confirmed that he would stay on until his successor was named, and that's a process by which, as I understand it, the party members of the Congress of Japan in his party will caucus, and they will select his successor to serve the rest of his term. He was prime minister before and resigned in 2007 after a flare-up of his condition, but then he won a landslide victory in 2012, and now he has been in that job until now. So he is the longest serving prime minister in Japan, and will be stepping down as a result of his illness.
Yeah,
So,
I think that in parliamentary systems, it's the party with the most seats. They put in place the prime minister. They choose the leader of their party to do that in places like the United Kingdom and other parliamentary systems.
which makes for a pretty easy transition usually, because the party votes for the person that they want to have unless there's some standoff. But,
Right.
there are 2 or 3 primary candidates that are out there that we'll find out probably in the next week or so what's happened with that.
Yeah.
Abe is really, known for his economic package that he put together, dubbed Abenomics. Instead of economics, it's Abenomics. And that basically succeeded in boosting jobs and brought an end to 20 years of deflation in Japan. But Japan, regardless of who takes over, is going to have some major issues to deal with. One of the things that they don't have to deal with, it seems to me, is COVID. Abe said that he was very happy to see that the measures were in place to protect the people of Japan, and therefore the timing of his stepping down would not harm that effort. Japan is about, what, 1/3 the size of the United States. So the United States is 2.5 times.
Yeah, in terms of population.
In terms of population, right?
Yeah.
And 2.5 times. So Japan has had 68,000 cases of COVID. The United States has had over 6 million cases of COVID. Japan has had but 1,296 deaths as of the data I got today.
Yeah.
The United States has had almost 190,000. So 2.5 times larger, but we have 92 times the number of cases and 146 times the number of deaths. So they're obviously doing something right.
Yeah, Japan was lauded, I think, by the WHO early on for their vigorous attack against the spread of COVID, and I think it's remarkable that it's almost a cultural norm. I lived in Japan for 3 years, and you would see people wearing masks who might have had an upper respiratory issue going on. So it's kind of a cultural norm that people wear masks as opposed to the United States, where it's become somewhat politicized.
Yeah. I don't think somewhat is the right adjective. It's become politicized. Yeah, I teach English as a second language as an avocation. Time. And we had a class yesterday, and we got into this, and the Japanese students basically said, "Why don't you people wear masks? We wear them all the time. It's not a big deal." And I didn't have a good answer for it. Anyway, when Abe steps down, the question of what's going to happen to the very strong and long-standing relationship with the United States. A few years back, one of Abe's predecessors sort of flirted a little bit with trying to tilt toward China, but that ended, and Abe has been a staunch supporter of the U.S.-Japan relationship. So who comes in and what's going to happen? Because China, as everybody knows, is doing things in Asia, and tensions are on the rise. There are 6 different governments, for example, including Japan, involved in territorial disputes with China on areas in the South China Sea. And one of the things, for example, is the Senkaku Islands, which are what the Japanese call them and the Chinese call them Diaoyu Islands. Both sides claim sovereignty.
Right. Yeah, that's an East China Sea chain, but there are tensions in the South China Sea that Japan's concerned about, because they rely very heavily on international shipping lanes that go through the South China Sea, for example, oil and gas that comes from the Middle East.
Yeah.
But the Senkaku chain is claimed by China, Taiwan and Japan. And I think 2 years ago, a cover on The Economist magazine featured the Senkaku Islands, and the title was the next major war in the world could erupt over this little rock. And it was talking about the claims to that. And you know, as we look at these various claims, and we're going to talk about the claims in the Eastern Mediterranean, it's not just the territory of this or that rock or even larger island that people are concerned about, but it's the economic exclusion zone that you draw around that piece of land where there could be underwater resources, oil, natural gas, minerals, and such that people are disputing ownership of. So the Senkakus, claimed by both China and Japan, has been a point of contention. And I think Prime Minister Abe has done diligent work in ensuring that the United States included the ownership of the Senkakus by Japan as part of its Mutual Defense Pact.
Yep. Well, the China thing is gonna rock along, the Hong Kong, and then what's gonna happen with Taiwan. So Abe's successor is gonna have to deal with that. And fortunately, the alliance with the U.S. looks pretty solid. And there is also something called the quadrilateral security dialogue, which involves the United States, Japan, Australia, and India, all sort of focusing on a free and open Indo-Pacific region. So these kinds of things, I think, regardless of who replaces Abe, are going to stay in place and will be important in the long run.
And that's called the Quad, right? Not to be confused with the Squad. That's something else.
That's the Quad, or the Quad 2. You're right. QUAD, right?
Yeah.
What you used to walk through when you were going from one class to another at the university campus, right?
Right.
Yep.
So looking to the future, I you know, a lot of analysts don't see a rosy path ahead for Abe's successor. They've got a lot of issues to resolve. They've had negative growth over the last 3 quarters. The annualized rate for the April to June quarter was about a contraction of about 30%, and that pretty well wiped out a lot of the gains that Abenomics had made in bringing the economy back around. So Abe's successor, whoever that is, somebody from the LDP, the Liberal Democratic Party, is going to face a tough road ahead in terms of the economics. As you know, frankly, the rest of the world, we're looking at a global recession, and Japan, despite their good situation vis-a-vis COVID, is not immune from the economic impact.
No, and their population is contracting, as you know, and so it's getting older and it's getting smaller, and that's going to have a long-term deleterious effect on its economic performance. So Japan will, the end of the story for me is, I think the Liberal Democratic Party will, A, stay in power after the elections, which come up, I think, in 2021, and B, whoever succeeds Mr. Abe is going to have a handful of things they're going to have to look at, but the relationship with the United States, I think, is going to be in good hands.
Yeah. Okay, moving right along, let's take a look at what's going on in the news regarding Russia and election interference, and our title, Here We Go Again. But first, let me remind our guests today to put some questions in the Q&A tab on your screen, and we'll be happy to answer them. But we'll tell you up front that Breck Walker isn't with us today, so no hard questions. The news, it seems to be a constant drumbeat that Russia is continuing to be involved in what's going on in our election. And before we jump into the news, I would mention to those of you who are familiar with our Global Tennessee podcast and our archives of these webinars on YouTube, I suggest you take a look at two things. The first one is an interview I did with Mr. Malcolm Nance. He wrote a book called The Plot to Hack America that was released in 2016, about a week before the intelligence community released its finding in October 2016 that Russia was involved in information operations against the 2016 election. So I had an opportunity to talk with Malcolm Nance when he was here last year, and he really outlined in great detail how Russia had put together the Internet Research Agency and all these other organizations that were involved in not just hacking, but information operations, bots and misleading information and so forth. The other thing that I would suggest you take a look at is the webinar we did a couple of months ago with a team from the Alliance for Securing Democracy. Our board member, Mark Braden, arranged this interview with Rachel Dean Wilson and David Salvo of ASD, and the panel was called Foreign Interference Undermining Election 2020 Securing Democracy Panel. So you can find that on our youtube.com/TNWAC channel on the internet, and that will provide you some good information about what's going on in general about the interference in the 2020 election. But let's just talk a little bit about this timeline, just to remind people of where we were 4 years ago. In October 2016, the Director of National Intelligence and the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security released a statement in early October that the Russians were interfering with our elections. And this was just kind of a warning shot that we knew they were involved in some things. The Obama administration took some actions actually after the election was held, sanctions and restricting access to Russian diplomats, et cetera. But there really was not much pushback at the time to what the Russians were doing. Obviously, in November 2016, President Trump was elected. In January 2017, the Director of National Intelligence released a statement again on Russian interference, but adding the additional information that the Russians were working in support of the election of President Trump and against candidate Clinton. Fast forward a little bit, and these reports continue to circulate. Obviously, we had the Mueller report in 2019, but there was an interesting footnote in Helsinki during a meeting between President Trump and Vladimir Putin. Someone asked the question of President Trump what he thought about Russian election interference, and he responded that he had asked Vladimir Putin about that and was told that they were not interfering with the election, despite the conclusion of our intelligence community. President Trump said he believed Mr. Putin and not the U.S. intelligence community. Fast forward to this year, we've had the PDB briefing on Russian bounties. So the Russians are aggressively getting involved in U.S. elections, U.S. operations around the world, and the current reports are really no big surprise.
At the PDB, for folks out there who maybe don't understand all these initials, this is the President's Daily Briefing. So the intelligence community, and in this case the CIA, is responsible for amalgamating all the intelligence that they receive and putting together a briefing to the president of the things that he should be aware of or that seem to be coming down the pike that are going to kind of get his attention. Presidents have in the past been known to spend 2 or 3 hours talking to the analysts about some of these things. In this case, the data out there contend that Mr. Trump doesn't like to read the PDB, and when somebody briefs him, he wants it short and sweet and out of there, and he can move on to other things. So the information is there, whether it's used or not is another question.
So, Dick, the reports this week, there was a New York Times article yesterday that talked about Russians again targeting Americans with disinformation. And this was a report about Facebook and Twitter and an effort by our friends at the Internet Research Agency, which was involved in the 2016 disinformation campaign. They are at it again, but they've refined their methods. And there's a good piece in Foreign Affairs, if anybody wants to dig a little deeper, about the overview of these kinds of operations. They didn't have the information that was going to be released about the Facebook report when they wrote this longer Foreign Affairs piece. But in the New York Times, the news is that the IRA, the Internet Research Agency, is trying to repeat its efforts to push voters away from the presidential candidacy of Joe Biden and to help President Trump. And what they say is going on is that the IRA is recruiting journalists through this sham website that's called Peace Data. And they're recruiting journalists to write articles and paying them. And what they've done is they've gone out and found far left journalists who have written critically of candidate Biden, Vice President Biden, and are promoting those articles on this Peace Data website and also on Facebook and Twitter. So the idea is that back in 2016, when the Internet Research Agency was working on this disinformation campaign, there were a lot of articles written that didn't look like they were written by Americans or English-speaking journalists. A lot of them were kind of ham-handed efforts at providing disinformation, but still there was a lot of information on bots that was amplified. But in this case, they've gone out and hired American journalists to write articles that they sought to diminish the candidacy of Vice President Biden. So this is just part of an overall campaign that we anticipate seeing. You don't know you've been hacked or fooled with until it's happened and you've had a chance to do some analysis. So I think we're probably not, this is probably the tip of the iceberg.
I think you're right. And I think, it gets at the sophistication of the audience that the Russians are trying to deal. Basically, their goal is to sow the seeds of distrust and doubt into the American democracy. American democracy is busted. It can't do the job. Your elections are going to be hacked. You're probably, you're not going to know who's going to win. All sorts of anything they can do to make it appear that our system is not working. And the Russians have been very good at this for a very, very long time. And during the Soviet era, the disinformation campaigns that they started about, where did AIDS come from and all sorts of things like that. So it's not anything new. What's new is the ability to get these words out using social media, with millions of people just being able to click on a Facebook or Twitter account and have it. And what also is new is that we have the most high-ranking person in this country who is participating in the process by sending out tweets and saying things that just patently aren't true. So it's going to be a difficult thing. And the United States government is not ramped up to be able to do much, if anything, about it. There are isolated offices in the State Department and Homeland Security and things of this sort, but nobody is totally in charge with how do we make sure that the information that's put out there is correct and factual. It can be opinionated. I like blue sky and somebody likes gray sky, but there is a sky, folks. So you've got to deal with reality.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is on the edge between international issues dealing with Russia and domestic issues, where one side or the other falls on whether this is a true threat. Last month, the director of the National Counterintelligence Center announced that the Russians, Chinese, and Iran were all trying to influence voting in the forthcoming election. But the administration officials have been arguing that the Democrats are using the Russian threat to use that against President Trump. The Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, was on Fox News on Sunday, and he said that China, not Russia, was the graver threat. But looking
You
overall,
think that's correct?
well, the intelligence, there are researchers who have said that China wants to increase their influence in the voting situation here, but so far no direct evidence that Beijing has taken direct action. So we'll wait to see how that all shakes out. So it's
part of the other thing, the twist on this is that this came out because Facebook, they announced that they're going to boot some of these guys off, right? This wasn't the United States government taking action against them. This was the private enterprise sector that did this.
Yeah.
And that's new. And they're tightening up a little bit as to what they have done in the past, but nobody's in charge. It's kind of Wild West out there.
Yeah. And, we have seen evidence that Russia used efforts to influence elections in other places as kind of a testing ground. Well, they also got some bang for the buck, but used it as a testing ground before deploying those kinds of tactics against the United States. And in fact, the Secretary General of NATO, Anders Rasmussen, he told a committee that unless the transatlantic community stands together, malign foreign powers will continue to pick off democracies one by one. And in this the Foreign Affairs piece that I mentioned from their September-October edition, Alina Polyakova, writing in an article called "The Kremlin's Plot Against Democracy," she noted that in all likelihood, 2020 will not be a replay of 2016. It will be far worse. So I think we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg, and we'll wait to see how that shakes out.
Yeah, well, she also wrote that this is sort of chicken feed. What the Russians spend to do this kind of activity is very, very small relative to the result they get. And from her perspective, the bang for the buck was a remarkable foreign policy coup, quote unquote. A seemingly pro-Russian U.S. President Donald Trump, a humiliating defeat for Hillary Clinton, whom Russian President Vladimir Putin had long disliked, and above all, a chance to expose U.S. democracy as dysfunction. So that's Ms. Polyakova's take on the matter. And it's going to keep going. So I think the first line of defense for me in this is a beefing up of the sophistication of the American electorate. I mean, you have to pay attention to where's this stuff coming from and what's going on, and is somebody really killing babies in the basement of a pizza parlor? And I mean, it's just the crazy stuff out there. So don't buy into it.
Yeah. Well, you raise a good point, Dick, that it's not just foreign interference. We have domestic elements that are putting out a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah.
Fake news. I hate to use that word, fake news. It's become kind of a trite term, but we have a lot of bad information floating around. Okay, are you ready for your Eastern Med cruise?
I am. I've got to put on my Hawaiian shirt on the Eastern Mediterranean. So beautiful place, Pat.
I guess a Hawaiian shirt would work. Well, what we're talking about is a face-off between Greece and Turkey, two NATO allies. They've in the past had some contentious issues, but for quite some time have been content to coexist. I guess the last dust up was the war over Cyprus, and you can
74.
Yeah, 74. So to set the scene here, you can see the Mediterranean Sea, Turkey to the north, Greece to the west, and then the large islands of Crete, just below the Aegean Sea, and the island of Cyprus closer towards the Levant, Syria, and Lebanon.
Let me just jump in, Kat, because it's important. Between Greece and Turkey, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of small islands.
Yeah.
And that's part of the issue as to A, who controls them, and B, does that little island have its own exclusive economic zone?
Yeah.
So you'll get into that, I'm sure. So.
Yeah, we'll talk about the EEZ, and you can see on the map on the right-hand side the line of control between Greek-controlled Cyprus and Turkey-controlled Cyprus. And just a little history: in '74. There was a war between the Turkish Cypriots and the Greek Cypriots over control of the island. Neither side proved to be the victor, so there's a UN line of control between the north and the south there. Speaking of med cruises, Dick, I was on a med cruise then, and we had just left Corfu, Greece, when the war broke out, and I was on an attack submarine. And back in those days, the Russians had lots of submarines, so we were assigned to sit off Cyprus, and you never know what might have happened in terms of U.S. having to get involved. So we sat there doing submarine kinds of things for about a month, and then we returned to our base in Sardinia for upkeep, and were ordered to return to Cyprus. The U.S. ambassador to Cyprus was assassinated, which heightened tensions. But the tensions between Greece and Turkey go back hundreds of years, and they've fought wars over Crete, and they've fought over these islands. So they are not strangers to squabbles with one another.
Let me just share a war story, Pat. I think it was around 1985. If you put that map back up there, you'll see Cyprus. Well, the Greeks tried to pull off a coup, and that triggered the Turks to say, no, we're going to protect the northern part of the island, which Turkey says it controlled. So that blue line goes through. There's the line of control that after, cooler heads prevailed, basically the Greeks that were living in the northern part of the island all fled to the south, and the Turks living in the south fled to the north, and there was this line of control. In the middle of this line of control, the United States had a listening station. And when I went there, I had business with the State Department embassy, and I don't think anybody had been in there in about 5 years or something. And I got a key and went into the building, and on the wall were the President Reagan's photo, long gone, but that wasn't Reagan's photo, I'm sorry, it was Ford that was there, 74. And, it was just the warp out of the past. So it's an interesting place. Anyway, moving on. Okay,
so, they've got a history of bad blood between the two. And let's catch up with the news now, what's going on. There's squabbling over claims to the territorial seas, and the kickoff event of this was a Turkish research ship headed out to do some drilling and research and look for gas deposits in the Mediterranean that they could capitalize on those deposits. And we'll take a look at some of these claims here. You can see on the left the EEZ, the exclusive economic zone, and this is typically a zone that extends 200 miles from the low water point of a piece of land that's part of the territory. But where you have multiple countries within close proximity, the line is typically drawn straight down the middle. And you can see that between Cyprus and Turkey and Cyprus and Syria, that's where the line roughly is. And on the left map, you can see the gas fields in the southern portion of that part of the Mediterranean, the southeast, Aphrodite and some others, some that are within the Israeli EEZ, some that are within the Egyptian EEZ. And then on the map on the right, you can see that the Turkish claims and they run right up against the EEZ of the of Cyprus. So this is what we're talking about here. This section of disputed territorial seas and economic exclusion zones that Turkey is looking to explore and exploit the gas resources there, and Greece will have none of it. So they've deployed ships to the area. There's been a collision between ships belonging to Greece and Turkey. Interestingly, and I need to dig a little deeper on this, the United Arab Emirates, a Persian Gulf nation, which was recently in the news for normalizing relations with Israel, they've deployed a squadron of F-16s to the island of Crete, where they are exercising with the Greek forces.
So Crete is part of Greece.
Yes, Crete is an island that it's uncontested as being a part of Greece. So we'll just back up here a second and reorient everybody. So Crete is the island just below the Aegean Sea, and that's where the deployments are. So in the Eastern Mediterranean, the French have sent warships, and they are on the side of Greece. The European Union, Turkey and Greece are in NATO, but Turkey is not part of the European Union. So the EU has come out quite strong that they will not tolerate the Turks' claims to gas that belongs to Cyprus, and Cyprus, which is also part of the EU, is being defended by the EU as well. So the story there is that there's a great potential for conflict. The United States has sent a vessel to the area. The United States has the Sixth Fleet in the area, but for some reason the ship they sent was not a especially fearsome looking vessel. This is the ship that
the Woody.
Yeah, the Woody. What was the full name? The USS. Dick, do you have that?
I'm looking for it here.
The USS Herschel Williams.
There it is.
Nicknamed the Woody. Herschel Woody Williams. It's actually an expeditionary sea base. So this is the ship that is representing the United States in the area. We've taken the position where we want the two sides to step back a little bit and not get further involved.
Well, it's spilling over as well because of what's going on with Syria and Egypt and Libya, and sides are being chosen, and as Turkey is supporting one particular faction in Libya, and they're getting too close to Egypt as far as Egypt's concerned. So Greece and Egypt have sort of tried to form a little deal and help each other out. So it's getting very complex and dangerous. And as somebody takes a wrong turn or a shot gets fired, a lot of bad stuff can happen. And Erdogan is a populist, and he's gonna, Turkey forever, make Turkey great again. The Greek prime minister, I think, is probably a little more measured in his approach, but it's a dicey situation.
Yeah, the Turkish side has definitely ratcheted up the rhetoric, which a lot of observers seem to think that will make it difficult for them to come to some negotiated position. But
Erdogan, for example, I'm just quoting here from the press, last week warned Athens that, quote, if it wants to pay the price, let it come and face us. And he added, Turkey will take what is its right in the Mediterranean, in the Aegean, and in the Black Sea. So he's basically, trying to make Turkey back into the Ottoman Empire and control the whole region. But it's not going to happen as far as other folks are concerned.
Yeah. Well, Dick, anything more on the Eastern Mediterranean? Have you been there other than your trip to Cyprus? A cruise to the islands, Santorini, maybe?
Haven't done a cruise, but I've been to Turkey 3 or 4 times. It's a beautiful, fascinating country. The whole country is fascinating, and the coast areas on the Mediterranean are great. Been to Greece. In fact, when I was stationed in Poland, there was an oppressive communist dictatorship, and the State Department said, you guys need to get out and get away. So for some R&R, so we went to Greece for R&R.
Very nice.
It was wonderful.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, we had
you sat in the bottom of in the submarine, right? Did you get shore at all?
Yeah, on the submarine we pulled into Corfu, Greece, and we had quite a lovely stay. The island was prepared for the USS Forrestal, which is an aircraft carrier with 5,000 sailors on board.
Yeah.
And because of the tensions increasing on Cyprus, the Forrestal was kept at sea. So in drove the USS Pargo, an attack submarine with about 110 guys. And here's this island expecting 5,000 sailors, and so we were quite
I can imagine.
Yeah, quite surprised that we had as much liberty as we could absorb. But then a month on station off the coast of Cyprus, and I've been to Athens and had a lovely time. Beautiful country. And I've been to Turkey with the World Affairs Council. Went with a group and had a fascinating experience in Istanbul and a circumnavigation of the Sea of Marmara in the Straits and down to Gallipoli.
Istanbul has to be one of the most interesting cities in the world. I would love to just maybe go over there and get a little apartment somewhere and spend 6 months and just every day go out and bumble around and see what you find, because it's just incredibly rich in history and culture. So it's wonderful.
Well, let me know when you're ready to go. Speaking of ready to go, let's take a look at our question of the week. Yeah, we got button this up. Answer to the quiz: the Office of the DNI will no longer brief key congressional committees on this issue, election security. And as you might imagine, there has been quite pushback from the Congress. They are threatening to take whatever measures are necessary to reverse this decision by the DNI. And this comes as there have been some other actions to inhibit the flow of information. You may recall earlier this year the worldwide threat brief that the heads of CIA, DIA, and NSA, and that's the National Security Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the Central Intelligence Agency, along with the DNI, they were withheld by the White House from briefing Congress. I think that stemmed from the previous year when the threat briefing indicated that North Korea was continuing to build nuclear weapons and missiles, and that didn't sit well with the White House, which might have had a different take on things.
Pat, unless I'm mistaken, the reason given for not briefing Congress, and Congress saying, we have a constitutional oversight here. We need to know what's going on. We can't perform our function correctly. And the reason given was, well, in these oral briefings, there's just too much leaking. And so I'm thinking they're going to give briefings, but it's all going to be written material. Now, if anything's easier to leak than somebody, who's you're talking to, it's a piece of paper. So that makes no sense to me, other than that there's stuff going on that people in high places don't want the other side to know.
If you turn in a report, they can't ask you questions.
That's right. And that's exactly correct.
So,
other than write back and say, I'd like you to explain this further. And that just, the process breaks down very quickly.
Yeah. All righty. Well, hopefully we'll have Dr. Breck Walker back with us soon, and we'll be back again. Our new time for our live broadcast of the Global News Review is every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Central Time. We look forward to your questions and comments. Feel free to tell us how we're doing by email at info@tnwac.org. Take a look at our website, our calendar of events. Again, we have the COVID-19 program tonight, the 2nd of September, and tomorrow, the 3rd of September. And we start our Election 2020 programming on the 10th of September. Our first program will be on China with Dr. Susan Haynes as our chair and some terrific panelists. Again, extraordinary and what is it?
Plenipotentiary.
Plenipotentiary.
Yep.
We'll have some of those too. So, Your Excellency, thank you once again for taking time on your Wednesday afternoon.
Pleasure to be with you. Have a good rest of the day, and we'll see you next week.
Yes, sir. Take care. Bye-bye.